today. So thanks for making the trip out here and being with us. I will be taking some questions, but want to give a few remarks first. First, I just want to give credit to our staff. We have amazing staff that do great work every single day. And it's challenging work a lot of times, especially with mandatory overtime and those things that we're faced with right now. But our staff do a great job. And we had a couple of incidents that you're aware of, and that's the prompting for us to be here. And we've addressed those thoroughly. We continue to make progress here with the Utah State Correctional Facility, the way that we house and the way that we operate. And we've done an after action review on every incident that we've had here, but we stepped up after we had a couple that were in close proximity to each other and really did a robust process to develop a safety plan that we're working through. That safety plan included from line staff to the warden's office and sergeants, lieutenants, captains, as well as the executive team for corrections as well. We've been in close contact with the governor and appreciate his support in helping us get to reach our goals on this. And we've really gotten a lot of staff input on how to make things better and how to improve things. And I've been in this facility quite a bit lately, and our staff have really good attitude and feel like the changes that they've suggested and have been adopted are making a difference, and we're improving. So I want to give credit to all of those folks and really highlight that our staff are amazing people and we appreciate them very much. As I said, we've done a very robust process on this, on how to get to safe and secure operations here. But I'll remind you that we moved here in July of last year, so we've been here 7 months, and we were at the Draper site since 1954, and so we were continually making safety improvements at that site as well. So this goal that we're going to be safe and secure will be adapting to that as long as we're here. We do that in all of our facilities as well. So again, we're in mandatory overtime. We understand that's a stress on our staff. We have 25 people in an academy that started this week, and that certainly helps. Our recruiting efforts are improving. We're recruiting more staff and retaining staff better than we have in quite a few years. So those numbers are looking better. We need about 135 more full-time people until we can be out of that mandatory overtime and function with a voluntary overtime status, which obviously makes an enormous difference. I will take questions, and so anything that you have you want to talk about safety and security at the Utah State Correctional Facility.
Well, you mentioned you've gone over the plan, you reviewed all the incidents. I mean, is it anything more than simply needing more personnel working, or what? I know you can't give me security information, but in a general sense, what did you do to improve the safety?
Yep, thanks. Appreciate that question, Pat. And it is a lot more than just needing more staff. So the site that we're at requires more staff than the Draper site did, but that's not the end of the story. And you're exactly right. It's a much more robust plan. And so the way we communicate with each other, whether it's on radio or shift briefings or pass downs, all of those things for better communication was a big part of that. The way that we call for doors. I mean, we looked at every part of the operation that we're doing now, and no, it's not just staff. It's a very robust plan. There's immediate action that we needed to take right away to improve safety and security. Those things have definitely made an impact. There's some short-term things that'll take a little bit longer time. There may be some infrastructure. Well, there are some infrastructure things as we have moved in and operated. There are some areas that needed additional cameras, some things like that. Those have been ordered and being installed. Potentially some mirrors to see in a potential blind spot or a corner or something like that. Then there's some long-term goals that will take a little bit longer, but we should be able to get them. We will get them during this year. That includes some audit processes that we're requesting from national experts to come in and help us take a look to make sure that what we're seeing and what we're doing are making the impact that we're seeing so far, and that we're going to land in the right place.
So you mentioned the comparison. You're in the last place as deputy, in this place just 7 months. How big of a difference is it managing the inmates here versus the old Draper facility?
Well, we can talk a little bit about geometry. So the old site was kind of based on circles. And so as you build a building in a circular fashion, you slice that pie, you'd have a control room in the center, and you could see from that center point around. We're built in a different model here because it's a different staffing plan here. So this is built around the concept of direct supervision, having an officer in the section or the ability to be in the section. Some of it is direct observation, but the concept of direct supervision means that the officer is in the section with folks and they address issues as they come and don't, it's more proactive and less reactive. And so built more on a square concept or rectangles. And so the basic design of the facility is different. The staffing patterns are different. And so it's a different model. We operate this facility very differently than we did the old facility, and we did a lot of training to get into this place. But as you get in and operate it, obviously you learn lessons very quickly.
Do you feel like you maybe moved into this facility a little quick, not knowing the design as well, and maybe some of the incidents that have happened as a result of design or not having mirrors in the right places or maybe cameras in the right places, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it might be easy to look back and say that it was a little quick, but I don't think that's the case. So the facility was finished early last year. We had a few months to come in and look. The difference is looking at it while it's being operated and looking at it as potentially being operated. And so we did have a few months to come in, train, operate the facility without people being here. But again, we were short-staffed enough that it's difficult to run one site, let alone two at the same time. And so our hand was a little bit forced that way, but we did have time to come in and do training and look and operate it, but not under a load, so to say. So it would be easy to look back and say, we moved in too quick, but I don't think that's accurate.
Do you think the mandatory OT and some of the assaults or some of the incidents itself has contributed to losing any staff at this point?
It could be. Now, whether that's fatigue or whether that's because mandatory overtime, we plug people into a spot that needs to be filled that day. That's one of the things in the short-term plan that we're working on to identify a way to have even mandatory overtime. We're using people across the entire state that work for the Department of Corrections. And so we're working on a plan to make sure that folks work in a more consistent environment. So you may be working in a less restrictive area today and more restrictive another day, and they may not operate exactly the same. We're trying to make sure that staff are more aligned with those housing operations that they're more familiar with and be more consistent with that.
Just using the Gunnison facility as an example, are you pulling people from there on a weekly basis to bring them up here for that as well?
Daily. Yes, daily basis.
Does the direct supervision model put your officers more at risk?
That's difficult to say at this point. And this is not a new concept. It's new for Utah. It's new for the Department of Corrections. It's not new in the state of Utah. Utah County's been doing this for a long, long time. Other counties have done this as well. So we were able to learn some lessons and do some things better because we had those examples, but other states have been doing this for a long time as well. So when you talk about risk, there's a lot of ways to manage and mitigate risk. Whether it's having that direct supervision model or not, the potential with direct supervision is to have more safe and secure environment, not less, because you can address things earlier and not have those bigger incidents happen.
Again, it only works if you have the right manpower.
It certainly helps, yes.
Director Park, I'm sorry we came in late.
Sorry, Director. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
So you answered this before I walked in, I apologize. So I want to ask a couple things. First, and this goes to the direct supervision that Pat was asking about. I understand the state statute that mandates direct supervision at this prison. And was there any discussion of asking the legislature in this session to amend that law to give you more flexibility in how you manage the prison?
Yeah, it was a great question. We've talked about it internally, and we haven't engaged our partners in the legislature at this point, but our legislative partners are very supportive. They're very aware of the things that are happening here at the prison. We meet with them. I've been on the Hill every day of the session. So we have great support of the legislature, and when we get to the point that should be recommended, I think we'll have support there as well. And so we're talking about that internally. We will engage our partners in the legislature and look at whether that's the appropriate language. It may go, maybe the appropriate move is to go from a shall do direct supervision to may. There are areas on this site that direct supervision are very appropriate. There are areas in more restrictive setting that direct observation is more appropriate.
And then, kind of a related question, you talked about your pulling staff all over the state to work up here. what extent does that create its own problem in the inmates not getting familiar with the staff and vice versa? I mean, am I correct? That was kind of one of the designs of direct supervision was both sides get to know each other, and so it's easier for staff to identify when inmates have a crisis of some kind because you know that behavior,
Yep.
et cetera.
You are correct. You've done good research on direct supervision. I appreciate that. So you've done a good job doing that, and that's why. So you're right. Being on mandatory overtime puts more stress on the system. One of the mitigations that we'll use, and it takes lots of steps, right? There's not one cure. There's not one fix for big problems. So as we try to use our staff in a more consistent way, so when we bring people in, whether it's voluntary overtime or mandatory overtime, and they're filling a shift, if we can help them be in a more consistent place, that'll help both sides of that. But you're right.
Look at my colleagues, see if it's okay, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay.
That's all you need.
Thanks. I know we've talked a lot about corrections officers, but I'm wondering what's the non-certified personnel staff, where do you stand in terms of needing those? And as well as, do you have enough volunteers right now to run the programs you want to run?
Our volunteer services are amazing. The volunteers that come out here and at Gunnison are absolutely critical to our operation. They are amazing. Our numbers of volunteers are good. Our management is good. When you talk about our civilian staff, we can't operate without our civilian staff. They are the stability that helps us operate. And so they fill lots of functions, right? That's not just your standard office managers, those type of things. We're using civilian staff to help operate the facility in appropriate positions, and that's helped put certified staff in the right positions. So our civilian staff are definitely helping us, and a lot of those folks are doing some overtime as well to help make sure that we run as smoothly as we can.
How down are you on civilian staff? Like, how many more do you need to?
No, we're able to recruit civilian staff. So our recruiting efforts in civilian staff and retention is quite effective. The area that the state is in kind of a struggle is with certified staff. There's been such a competitive marketplace for certified staff in the state of Utah, and until we address the shortage of public safety officers across the board, that's going to be an issue.
I'm not sure what you mean when you say you're recruiting civilian staff. Like, do you have enough civilian staff right now?
We do. When we have a civilian staff position and we open that, we get a good applicant pool we're able to hire, and we're able to keep those folks. Now, when we talk every year about our certified pay plan, and we're able to help with recruitment and retention efforts through legislative funding and appropriation. Our support staff, our civilian staff often feel left out on that, and we try to do our best to take care of those folks too, but we absolutely can't operate without our civilian staff.
And then what about programming then? Are you able to provide all the programming you need to be providing right now in order for inmates to make parole dates and satisfy the board?
Yeah, so I don't have the data with me today. I've got the data, I've reviewed it, we've presented it a number of times. I'd encourage you to go to some of the legislative committees we've presented on this year. We've got really good data on the programming we're delivering, and the numbers are really good. We're able to deliver a really robust programming. We focused on safety and security for the prison today, so I didn't bring that data. I'd love to share it with you. So let's get together. I'm sure Caitlin will work with you and we'll get you that data.
Okay. Well, I've been led to believe programming is kind of part of safety and security. I mean,
It is.
If you need cognitive behavioral training, that helps make sure you're not committing assaults and stuff like that.
That's one aspect where it helps. It helps people be engaged as well, right? The more free time that they have, the more mischief we can get in potentially. So whether they're working, programming, educating, we kind of lump those things together to have them spend their time productively, and all of those things are going pretty well. Now, obviously, the shorter we are on staff, there are times that we have to close them things to make sure that we cover the security posts. So sometimes programming suffers a little bit, but as we ramp up more security staff, we'll be able to deliver more programming. But like I say, I'm excited to share the data with you on our programming because it looks pretty good.
Brian, have you lost any staff here as it directly relates to security concerns some of these altercations that have taken place here in the last 7 months?
I wouldn't say that we haven't. We're able to retain staff really well, and we do exit interviews anytime someone does retire, resign, any of those things. I haven't seen a specific question asked. I haven't seen an answer to our questions on why people leave that it was because of security. I haven't seen that specifically, but I couldn't rule it out.
Do you know of any officers that were assaulted that left?
No. And hopefully we're taking good care of the officers that have been in that situation. So.
And those after action reviews you do, obviously without getting into the nitty gritty of them, but what have you taken away from some of them over the last couple months here, especially when you had a couple in a row of some more serious incidents, at least as it was described?
So the after action on each individual one, in every case, there have been action items that we could take to mitigate that from happening in the future. There have been things that we could do, whether it was something that we did and put us in a position where we're more vulnerable. We've been able to identify action items on each one of those after action reviews of each incident, but really when we had those that were close together in proximity, that triggered a much more robust process that helped us develop a better, more robust security plan.
Were there similarities in those incidents, those specific incidents that you noticed in terms of where someone was positioned, a blind spot, without getting into too much of the exact location?
They were not necessarily similar. No, they were caused by different factors. It depends which ones we're talking about. Some are, but well,
One of the incidents that we all reported on.
no. They're still recovering and they'll be back with us soon. So.
There's one last question about programming. So when an officer goes before the board and he or she, says, I've not been able to get into programming yet, whatever kind of programming that is, why would that necessarily be the case if the inmate was having trouble? Assuming it's not a behavioral issue, right? Okay, I get, there's behavioral problem, why wouldn't it go? Assuming there's no behavioral problem, why wouldn't he or she be able to get into the program that he or she did?
Well, I'd rather talk about specific cases. So let's get into let's have the conversation, Nate. Let's engage. I didn't bring the programming data today, but let's talk. If you want to talk process, when someone goes to the board, they go to the board for a few reasons, right? As soon as someone comes in, they're going to get an initial board hearing. So that board hearing kind of helps them develop the plan, what they need to do while they're here with us. It may be years and years between the initial hearing and the time that they would be eligible for parole. So the process is much longer than that. So as soon as we bring somebody through the front door, we start on their case action plan. The board's engaged at that point to determine what their eligibility will look like, and then we work together on delivering those things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all coming out and appreciate the questions. So